The room was loud before anything even started. Not loud with noise, but loud with ego. Folding chairs scraped the concrete floor as people settled in, some leaning against the walls, others standing with their arms crossed. Most were there out of curiosity. A few were there to learn, and one man, standing confidently near the center of the mat, was there to prove a point. He was an Israeli trainer, well-built, clean posture, sharp eyes. Years of military training sat comfortably on his shoulders. He spoke with authority, the kind that comes from being listened to for a long time. As he paced slowly, holding a training knife, he talked about efficiency, modern combat, and what he called real-world violence. His words were confident, almost dismissive of anything that didn't come from his background. Then, he laughed. He mentioned Filipino knife fighting, calling it outdated, ceremonial, something that looked good in demonstrations, but failed in reality. A few people chuckled. Some stayed silent. In one corner of the room, a Filipino man listened without reacting. He wasn't dressed like a fighter. No uniform, no patches, just simple training clothes, worn shoes, calm posture. If you weren't paying attention, you'd miss him completely. The Israeli trainer continued, explaining angles, pressure points, modern tactics. He talked about how traditional systems collapse under stress. Then he said it out loud, that Filipino blade systems relied too much on tradition and not enough on realism. That's when someone from the audience spoke up. "Would you like to test that?" The room shifted, not dramatically, just enough for everyone to feel it. The Israeli trainer smiled, thinking this was going to be a lesson, maybe even a performance. He agreed easily. "A controlled demonstration," he said. "Light contact. Safety first." The Filipino man stepped forward quietly. No speech, no correction, no defense of his culture. He simply nodded. They were given training knives. Rubber, flexible, but still capable of leaving marks. The rules were basic. Engage naturally. Stop if someone was clearly overwhelmed. The first few seconds were uneventful. The Israeli trainer moved first, confident, direct, fast, clean strikes, strong footwork. He was good. No one could deny that. The Filipino man retreated slightly, not in panic, but in rhythm. His steps were small, almost lazy. To some watching, it looked like he was being pushed back. Then, something changed. The Filipino man stopped retreating and started angling. Not blocking, not clashing, just slipping. Every attack that came in didn't meet resistance. It met absence. The Israeli trainer adjusted, sped up, added pressure. His strikes came harder now, sharper, more aggressive. And still nothing landed clean. People began to notice small things. The Filipino man's blade was always moving, but never wasted. His offhand was alive, checking, guiding, redirecting. His feet weren't planted. They flowed, circling, cutting angles that weren't obvious unless you were trained to see them. Then the first mark appeared, a red line on the Israeli trainer's forearm. He didn't notice at first, then another, this time across the ribs. The room went quiet. The Israeli trainer's confidence didn't disappear, but it cracked. His breathing changed. His movements became tighter, less expressive. He started defending more than attacking. That's when the Filipino man moved forward. Not explosively, not dramatically, decisively. In a span of seconds, the demonstration turned into something else entirely. The Filipino man closed distance, controlled the arm, cut the line, stepped offline, and placed the blade at the trainer's neck, gently but undeniably. They froze. The instructor called it. The silence was heavy. When they separated, the Israeli trainer looked down at his arms, his torso, his side. Marks everywhere. Not random, strategic. Arteries, tendons, fatal lines. He laughed nervously and shook his head. "I didn't see it," he admitted. The Filipino man finally spoke. "You weren't supposed to." There was no celebration, no arrogance. He bowed his head slightly and stepped back into the crowd. But the damage was done. Not to the body, but to an idea. After the demonstration, people gathered in small groups. Some asked questions. Others just replayed what they'd seen in their minds. The Israeli trainer approached the Filipino man privately. They talked for a long time. No one recorded it. No one needed to. What happened next wasn't about humiliation. It was about respect. The Israeli trainer later addressed the room again. This time, his tone was different, softer, grounded. "I was wrong," he said. "I judged something I didn't understand." He spoke about assumptions, about how modern combat doesn't invalidate old systems, and how survival knowledge is shaped by environment, history, and necessity. He acknowledged that Filipino blade arts weren't designed for sport or performance, but for survival in close, chaotic, unforgiving conditions. The Filipino man explained very little. He talked about learning from elders, about training with sticks before blades, about how every movement had a purpose, not to win, but to live. He said something that stuck with many people that day. A knife fight is not about skill. It's about damage control, about ending things fast enough to walk away. No one laughed after that. In the days that followed, clips of the encounter spread online. Titles exaggerated the moment. Some framed it as humiliation, others as proof of superiority. But the truth sat somewhere quieter. It wasn't about Israel versus the Philippines. It was about humility versus assumption. Filipino knife systems were born in a time when blades were common, when survival depended on understanding distance, timing, and intention. They weren't designed for show. They were designed for chaos, for uneven ground, for surprise attacks, for real consequences. The Israeli trainer didn't lose credibility that day. He gained perspective. And the Filipino man didn't win a fight. He reminded everyone that knowledge doesn't always wear a uniform, doesn't always speak loudly, and doesn't always need to announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly in the corner, and when challenged, it speaks with precision.